In this video, we're going to talk about filters and how we can use them to our advantage to intercept the request and make sure users logged in before we allow them to proceed to one or more pages. So for this video, we're going to need the world manager with filters and wrappers.war file. We'll actually use this for the next video, which is on wrappers as well. So go ahead and load this into the system. Make sure all the build paths are set up. Go ahead and start it and run it right away just to verify everything's working. We'll go ahead and do that. And we'll see that right now, when we run this, we will not have the ability to be protected against any of our view cities and view countries. We'll work right away. Let's expand that so we can see that. And even view cities 2 and view countries 2 will work right away. Now, we're not even logged in. We can verify that we're not logged in and it still works. So obviously we want to protect these, and we talked about this earlier a couple of sections ago when we talked about the fact that we had to write code on every single page to prevent a user from getting to that page if they weren't logged in, and it can become really tedious, especially if we need to rework our authorization schema for some reason. So this is where filters become really handy. There are obviously a couple different ways to do filters, which is why I've set up a couple different methods. And I've changed a couple things in the system here just to make this work really nicely. I had to change a couple of the paths and hard code them in for our navigator to the full path. Since we're going to have some leveled pages at this point, we'll be under the protected folder. And to get back up all the way to login, it's just easier sometimes to make sure that we have everything completely coded. So we're going to go right to the full path here. So if your port is different, you may need to change this number here. That might be happening to you. And there may be a couple other places. So obviously, the URL management at this point is not ideal, but it is up and running, so we're going to go ahead and run with it. And we've added protected to and protected to the list cities and countries, and we have a duplicate of both of those pages, which is just going to give us the ability to show a couple different filters applied in different ways. So let's look at what a filter is. So here we have our authorization filter. And right now, when I create a filter, I can right-click and select a new filter. And when I do that, it gives me the opportunity to name it whatever I want to. And on my next step, then I can set my URL pattern. So here you can edit this, and it also asks you if you want to select dispatchers. They're all included by default if you're on version 2.0 JSP or greater, so just leave them blank. If you're on a lower version, you may need to specifically include these. And then set your pattern. So /star will basically be applied on any single request. We'll see that when we work with our wrapper in a moment in the next video. But right now we're going to want to protect just specific areas. Now this is really handy because we obviously don't want all of our URLs to be intercepted and require a login, because then even the login page would require a login and it would continuously loop and we'd have a really big problem. So that's a really nice thing about filters. Now I'm not going to finish this here. You could go ahead and do that if you'd like. I've already set that up with authorization filter here. And I actually put in remove me /protected just so that we would have the ability to run and not be protected. So let's go ahead and modify the filter here to just be /protected /star, and that will give us a protection over the protected folder and any files in it by the /star there. What we'll do then is we'll intercept, and when this runs, basically anytime a request comes in, the first thing we need to do is verify the user's logged in. Well, these requests and response are coming in as the base type servlet request, not as the full type HTTP servlet request. So we have to cast them back in order to get the sessions and things that we need. So we go ahead and do that first, and then we get our session, and then we check our web user to get the attribute, make sure that that web user is logged in. If they're not logged in, go ahead and send them back to the login, and this will protect us from showing these pages to an unauthorized user. Otherwise, we go ahead and simply just say chain.doFilter and pass on the original request and response. It's the same object, so we can just pass it on, and that will actually just pass it on the chain, whatever is next in the chain, which would be the page we're going to that was originally intercepted here at the filter. So now that we've seen that, let's go ahead and run our index once again. And this time we should be able to see that in order to list the cities without the number 2, view cities and view countries 2 will still work just fine without being logged in. But if we try to view cities 1, we get requested to log in. So that means our filter has intercepted the request. It's under that protected folder. It said, hey, you can't view this page until you've logged in. So we'll go ahead and sign in. I didn't set this up to do the auto forwarding, so now we'll just re-click on view cities. And now we can see view cities and view countries both are allowed now that we've correctly logged in. So our filter is still checking, but it's saying, okay, you're good. And so again, if we sign out, once again, countries or cities will require that login, then we can log in and see them. So that's a real simple way that we can see a filter in action. I left one more in play, and that's going to be on our view cities 2 and our view countries 2. And the reason I did this is because if you're working with an older version, you may still be using a version that requires you to do this in the web XML file. And so it's not that difficult. It's exactly the same code. Everything is set up exactly the same way. We just don't have the directive on the top. We're still implementing filter. We still have the same methods for constructor, destroy, do filter, and init. We're doing the exact same code we did before, so there's nothing different about the way we're handling this. The only difference is that we're simply going to run the config instead of through that parameter. We'll run it on top of the protected2 folder, and we'll use the web XML to do that. So the file filterconfig.txt contains everything we need. Quickly copy this, and we can put that right in our web XML. Let's just go down to the bottom right above the welcome file list there. We can go ahead and put that in. And you'll see it's just like our servlet mapping, where we had a servlet name and then a servlet mapping. This is a filter with a filter mapping. We have a filter name that has to match, so this really doesn't matter other than it has to match, again, just like we've seen before. And this is just our class that we're running, which is authorization filter 2. And this is our URL pattern right here that we're protecting, protected2/*. So now protected2 will also be protected. So let's go ahead and run this one last time, and we can see all that in action. So the first thing I'm going to do is sign out, just in case for some reason my session has actually passed through and it looked like it actually showed infinite skills there. So let's go ahead and make sure you sign out first. Then try to click on View Cities or View Countries too, and View Cities and View Countries. You can see everything now is filtered as we expected. So we can go ahead and sign in, and now we should be able to see our cities and countries on any of these links, and we can. So that looks like everything is up and running. Our filter is in place. So once again, all we had to do to apply a filter in the newer system is just right-click and select Create Filter and make sure that our web filter path is pointed to the right path we want to protect. We put our files inside of that folder, and then we handle the request and do the things we need to do. If there's a problem, we do what we need to do to fix it on our filter. And if there's not a problem, we go ahead and just let it pass through.